A lot of young men think their life will change because of one big moment, one big decision, one big burst of motivation, some dramatic turning point where everything suddenly clicks. And sometimes life does have those moments. Sometimes something happens that wakes you up a bit. But if I'm honest, most real change doesn't happen like that. It happens quietly, slowly, in ways that don't look very impressive at the time. Hi, I'm John. I'm a dad of two boys, and I spend a lot of time thinking about life, what matters, what doesn't, and how to help my boys build a solid future for themselves. And one thing I keep coming back to is this. A good life is usually built out of ordinary habits, not glamorous ones, not dramatic ones, not the sort of things people make films about, just small things, done often enough that they quietly start changing who you are. And I think that's important because a lot of young men are waiting for life to change in some big, exciting way. They're waiting to feel different, waiting to feel motivated, waiting to suddenly become more disciplined, more focused, more sorted. But meanwhile, their daily habits are taking them in the opposite direction. And that's the thing about habits. They work whether you're paying attention to them or not. Good habits help you. Bad habits hurt you. Either way, they add up. That's why they matter. Because your life is not really made out of your intentions. It's made out of what you keep doing. That's the honest bit. You can intend to get fit, intend to save money, intend to read more, intend to sort your life out. But if your actual habits say otherwise, then your life follows your habits, not your hopes. And I think that can be quite useful to realize, even if it's slightly annoying, because it means you don't need to become some completely new person overnight. You just need to start paying attention to the small things you repeat. Now, when I say habits, I don't mean you need some ridiculous morning routine involving ice baths, gratitude journaling, and staring at the sunrise while doing breathing exercises on one leg. If that works for someone, good luck to them. But for most people, the habits that quietly change your life are much simpler than that. They are usually quite boring, which is exactly why people ignore them. But boring habits are often the ones that work best. So let me go through a few that I think genuinely make a difference. Not because they're trendy, not because they sound clever, just because they actually help. The first one is walking. And I know, that doesn't sound very exciting. No one ever says, "This one simple trick changed my life," and then dramatically reveals a walk. But honestly, walking every day is one of the most underrated habits there is. It helps your body, it helps your mind, it helps your energy, it helps you think, it gives you space, and it's also one of the easiest ways to stop a day from becoming completely sedentary and foggy. A lot of young men sit too much. Work, screens, phones, gaming, studying, scrolling, and before you know it, you've spent most of the day barely moving. Then you wonder why you feel flat. Walking is simple, but simple is good. A habit doesn't need to be impressive to be useful. The second one is drinking mostly water. I know we just did a whole video on that, so I won't bang on too much, but it matters. If most of what you drink is water, you make life easier for yourself, healthier, clearer, usually leaner as well. And again, it's one of those habits that doesn't feel life-changing in the moment, but over time, it absolutely is. The third one is reading a little every day. Not because reading automatically makes you wise. Some people read loads and still seem determined to make ridiculous decisions, but because reading builds attention. It slows you down a bit. It improves how you think. And if you're reading useful things, it also improves what's in your head. That matters, because what you feed your mind matters just as much as what you feed your body. A lot of young men consume endless noise, clips, posts, nonsense, distraction, and then wonder why their mind feels scattered. Even 10 or 15 pages a day of something useful can have a real effect over time. Again, not dramatic, but compounding. The fourth habit is tracking your money, not obsessing over it. Not turning into some sort of miserable accountant who can't enjoy a cup of coffee without opening a spreadsheet. Just paying attention. Knowing roughly what's coming in, what's going out, and where your money is leaking. That habit alone can quietly change your life. Because money problems are often not just money problems. They become stress problems, relationship problems, sleep problems, confidence problems. And a lot of young men avoid looking at money properly because it feels uncomfortable. But that discomfort is exactly why the habit matters. Looking at your spending regularly is one of those adult habits that doesn't feel glamorous, but future you will be very grateful for it. Another habit that helps more than people realize is keeping your space reasonably tidy. Not perfect, not like a furniture catalog, just not chaotic. Because your environment affects your mind. If your room, desk, kitchen, or car is always a mess, that does something to you. You might get used to it, but it still adds friction. It makes everything feel a bit heavier, a bit more scattered, a bit less intentional. And I think some young men underestimate how much calmer life feels when your basic space is in order. It doesn't need to be spotless, just looked after. That habit says something as well. It says, I take care of my life. That matters. Another one is sleeping at a decent time, or at least giving yourself half a chance of proper sleep. Again, not glamorous. No one brags about having a sensible bedtime, but poor sleep quietly wrecks everything. Your mood, your appetite, your focus, your patience, your training, your energy. And once your sleep goes off, it tends to drag other habits down with it. So even if you can't be perfect with sleep, having some basic respect for it is a very good habit to build. Another one I really like is doing one useful thing before distraction. That's a great habit. Before you scroll, before you put something on, before you disappear into the evening, do one useful thing first. Something small. Answer the message. Do the physio exercises. Go for the walk. Read 10 pages. Tidy the kitchen. Sort the bill. Just one useful thing. Because that stops the whole day drifting away from you. And often, once you do one useful thing, it becomes easier to do another. Momentum matters. So does self-respect. And small, useful actions build both. Another habit that changes life quietly is staying in touch with people. I think this one matters more than young men realize. A lot of people are not great at maintaining relationships. They mean well, but they assume the good people in their life will just sort of stay there without any effort. But relationships need maintenance. A message, a check-in, a coffee, a call, a bit of effort. That matters. Because good relationships are one of the biggest buffers against loneliness, stress, and life generally feeling heavier than it needs to. You don't need loads of people, but you do need to look after the right ones. And then there's the habit of tracking progress. That one is huge. Because a lot of useful habits are quite dull in the moment. Walking, reading, saving, stretching, studying, they don't always feel rewarding straight away. But when you track them, suddenly they become visible. And visible progress is motivating. A habit tracker, a notebook, a calendar, a simple list on your phone. Whatever works. Again, it doesn't need to be fancy. You just need to be able to see that you're doing the thing. That helps more than people think. Now, the reason these habits matter so much is not because each one is magical on its own. It's because together they slowly shape your identity. You become someone who walks, someone who drinks water, someone who reads, someone who pays attention to money, someone who keeps things in order, someone who follows through. And that identity shift is where the real change happens. Because once something becomes normal for you, it stops feeling like effort in the same way. That's why habits matter more than big plans. Big plans are exciting. Habits are what remain when the excitement wears off. And that's worth remembering, because I think a lot of young men still believe life changes because of huge, dramatic effort. Sometimes they wait for the perfect burst of motivation. But in reality, a good life is usually built by small things repeated long enough that they start feeling ordinary. That's not a very flashy message, but it's true. And true is more useful than flashy. Now, I also want to say this. You do not need to build every good habit at once. That is another common mistake. People hear a list like this and think, right, brilliant. From tomorrow, I'm walking daily, reading daily, budgeting, sleeping perfectly, tracking habits, texting my mates, and tidying my room every evening. And then, unsurprisingly, they do it for about 4 days and collapse. Don't do that. Pick one or two. That's enough. Start there, make them stick, then add another. That's how habits actually get built, slowly enough that they last. And if my boys ever watch this one day, I hope they understand that the life they want will probably not be built through one giant moment. It will be built through small habits that seem almost too ordinary to matter. Walking, reading, saving, sleeping, tidying, drinking water, checking in with people, doing one useful thing before distraction. Those are the kinds of habits that don't look very exciting from the outside, but quietly change everything. And if you can build those early, you put yourself in a very strong position. Not perfect, not finished, just stronger, steadier, more in control. And that's a very good place to build from. All right, that's what I've been thinking about. I'll see you in the next one.